Welcome to the Trip Tales podcast with me, Kelsey Graves. Let's jump into a new episode exploring a vacation destination that you'll want all the details about. Hey everyone, welcome back to Trip Tales. Today we are going to be talking about a listener's family trip to the Grand Canyon. And I'm selfishly very excited about today's episode because I'm currently planning this same trip for my family this summer. My guest is Joy Smith from the Savvy Travel Mamas Instagram account. So welcome, Joy. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I start every episode with a rapid fire get to know you. So tell everyone where you live, what you do, and about your family.
So I live right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and we've been here, oh my gosh, like 20 years. So B&A is my home airport, which I think we're really, really spoiled with that as our home airport, in my opinion. So what I do is my mom and I run a company called Savvy Travel Mamas, and we teach people how to travel for nearly free on credit card rewards. Which is a ton of fun because we get to show you how to take luxury trips and save huge on your flights and hotels everywhere you go. It really is life-changing. My family, I have two children. It's my husband and I, and he works a regular old job. So our vacation time is limited, but we learn how to stretch and maximize every break that we get with our kids. I have two littles, so I'm a mom just like you, stuck to school schedules, more expensive times of year to travel. And we do the best with what we have and really try to make those dollars stretch to enjoy it more.
And Joy and I connected in Franklin, Tennessee recently in person, which was super fun. And I promise I'm not trying to just have Franklin and Nashville people on the podcast. Any of y'all can write in and email me at triptalespodcast@gmail.com. And we will keep getting more and more people on the schedule. But we were connected through a fellow podcaster, Joe from Wonderland on Points podcast, which I'm a huge fan of. So we were able to meet up in person and talk travel. And I just thought it was so interesting that Joy's mom was like a points OG. So Joy grew up with her mom already navigating this points and miles world. I know it's been a thing for a while, but I feel like recently, especially with social media, it's become so trendy and such a topic. But you guys were already doing it. So the thing that's fun about Joy's Instagram account is that she's got her mom to bounce things off of, who has been doing this for years and years and years. And now Joy is also dipping her toe into it with her family. And Trip Tales isn't a points and miles podcast by any means. There are so many amazing people already doing that out there. But every time I have a points and miles expert on, I always try to pick their brain and ask questions that I have right now because I have dipped my toe into it and I'm loving it. I'm actually about to book 2 trips almost completely on points and Southwest miles, companion pass, all that stuff, which is very exciting. But even having done it for like a year or two now, every other day, I swear I learned something new. That's like erase this and transfer to KLM and switch it to Hawaiian. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's so much information. But the cool thing is that Joy just recently launched a course where she can teach you guys about this stuff. So do you want to tell them really quickly what your course is called? If this is something that you guys just need like a crash course in.
Absolutely. So it's called Points Travel Academy. And what we do is we take you from the very foundation of points and miles. We talk about how to set your own personal travel goals because travel is very personal. There's not a one size fits all approach to travel. What works for me doesn't work for my mom because she is retired. She is in a season of life where she can chase the best deals, make her points stretch as far as possible, and get up and go on a moment's notice. I have to pre-plan out around the school schedules when it's way more expensive. So a good deal to her is very different than a good deal to me. So in our course, what we do is we teach you how to build a foundation and give you the tools that you need to understand what points value is, how it works, because it's the same process no matter which credit card you have. As long as you have the right credit card, the process remains the same. So our goal is to teach you how to use the credit card you have and to build a lasting credit card strategy, knowing how to get the value out of it. My mom has been doing this for over 25 years. She started before even Google existed. Like honestly, really before the internet. I mean, in the late 90s, would you have you were lucky if you had one computer at home. We were still playing Oregon Trail in school. And it was it was such a different world when she started this. We have a lot more resources, but the resources are on the opposite side where they're just too overwhelming. So we help you navigate through the noise. We show you how to build that foundation from the ground up, how to pick the right credit cards for you, for your personal situation, how to evaluate those credit card offers, and then talk through a lot of tips and tricks. So it's going to be a really fun course. We're very excited about Points Travel Academy and just to be able to share mom's wealth of knowledge that she has been building for over 25 years and has been able to save over $500,000 on her trips.
Amazing. We will link all that stuff in the show notes so that you guys can find them. And I just think it's such a cool and unique relationship that you guys come at it from a mother-daughter duo. So I love that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we are moving on to your Grand Canyon trip. So you traveled to the Grand Canyon this past summer in July 2024 for 5 days. And obviously, the Grand Canyon is iconic and a must see for so many people. But what made you decide on planning this trip at this time?
Last year, my son was in fourth grade. And if you have a fourth grader and you do not know about this, you need to look it up now. It's called the Fourth Grade National Park Pass. As a family, you will, if you have a fourth grader, you will get a free pass to all national parks. So I was determined to not let that national park pass go to waste. So we made a list, and my 10-year-old and I, who was 10 at the time, we sat down and we made a list of all the places we wanted to go. I wanted to make this a really special trip with him because one of our best friends had just moved away the year before, and they FaceTime like at least 2 times a week and still keep in touch. And so since they're the same age and the mom was one of my best friends, we're like, let's do a mother-son trip and just make this a really good bonding experience. So we let them choose after we went through several parks. And we settled on the Grand Canyon, which turned out to be such an amazing adventure. We had a blast there.
I love it. I have recently discovered the fourth grade National Park Pass as well. I have it sitting here right on my desk. And I looked it up last night because we're going to be going probably May or June. And so I was like Googling, does the pass work the summer after fourth grade? And yes, it works through the summer after fourth grade. So we're going to sneak ours in at the last minute. So I'm pretty pumped about that. And my son thinks it's cool that he is like getting our whole family into the Grand Canyon with his cool fourth grade pass. So I'm going to have to do it again with my youngest when she gets into fourth grade. There seem to be two schools of thought when planning a Grand Canyon trip, flying into Vegas or flying into Phoenix. So tell us which you decided on and why.
Well, when you go to that part of the country, there is so much more than just the Grand Canyon. And when my friend and I sat down to start mapping out this trip, right, most people will just fly into Phoenix or Vegas and just visit the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Well, there is the north rim of the Grand Canyon. There's so many other amazing national parks over there to see. There's Hoover Dam, there's Horseshoe Bend, there's the Slot Canyons. And we just sat down and started making a list of everything that was around there. We ended up going into Vegas because once we started mapping it out and looking everywhere we wanted to go, we made a circle from Vegas all the way around North Rim, South Rim, Sedona, and back up to Vegas to just fly in and out. The other thing to note with rental cars, because you pretty much need a rental car in that part of the country, is it is more expensive if your rental car is rented from one airport and returned to another airport, which was another driving factor for us, which is why we wanted to loop it back around.
Hey, Trip Tales listeners, I'll keep this short. If you're loving the podcast, leaving a review or buying me a coffee is the quickest way to show your support, and it will ensure that these amazing trip stories keep coming. Leave a review wherever you are listening to this podcast, or buy me a coffee at the link in the show notes, and I'll literally do a happy dance when it comes through. Okay, back to the show. So speaking of rental cars, did you rent a car through a traditional rental car agency? Did you do Turo? What did you guys do when you got to Vegas?
So I have a little unfair advantage on rental cars. I have a family member that works at Enterprise Corporate, so I just always go through.
Amazing.
I get the friends and family link on that. So I don't count rental cars in any of my travel values or anything because I don't think that's fair.
I love that. Hey, use all the perks you can get. So you land in Vegas, you've got your rental car through your friends and family, and the first stop is Valley of Fire State Park. So I've never been here, but tell us all about the Valley of Fire State Park.
It was the end of July and it was hot. Like I
Literally the
am
Valley of Fire.
yes, we were on fire while we were there. But if you Google pictures for the Valley of Fire State Park, it is unlike anything I've ever seen. The rocks were so red, and just the coloring of the rock formations and the way that they changed from this bright fire red to like lighter colors and white. And I was really bummed because it was so hot. Some of the trails of their more well-known picture spots were blocked off because it was just like you would have died literally if you walked there. And it was so neat just to experience like rock that red and colorful. And pro tip, if you go in July, make sure you have multiple phones to trade off for photos because your phone will literally overheat in 30 seconds.
Yes, that's a great tip. Multiple phones, water. I'm sure you need a lot of
Lots of
water.
water. Yeah. And
Um,
they have water everywhere. They're at the like visitor centers and water spots everywhere. So
Good to know. So when you show up at the state park in Vegas, do you need any sort of a reservation? Do you have to buy any sort of pass, or do you just kind of show up and walk in?
great question. So it's about an hour outside of Vegas. When you leave the Vegas airport, and we were driving up to southern Utah, where we were going to spend the night that night to do some other things. So it was right in the middle of Vegas to southern Utah. And it is, if I remember correctly, it was $15 per car. It's not covered in the National Park Pass because it's a Nevada State Park. So it wasn't covered in that. But $15 is not that much for some of these state parks. You drive in and you drive in one side and you drive out the other side, and then you just keep going on. And there are lots of viewpoints and stopping points along the way. So
Cool. Good to know. So then I believe you continued on to Coral Pink Sand Dunes State Park before you headed to your accommodations. So is there really pink sand in the Pink Sand Dunes State Park?
yes. So we timed it where we landed in Vegas in the morning, because we were coming from, the eastern side of the US. Getting to Vegas in the morning is really easy to do. And so we had all day. So we drove, we got to spend our time at Valley of Fire, and then we timed it to hit sunset in Kanab, Utah at the Coral Pink Sands Desert. And I have never seen sand that pink. Like I had on a pink shirt and it was as pink as my shirt in some of our photos. So it was so cool to just walk out there, and the sand was so soft. It's unlike beach sand. I don't know how to describe it. And people were like surfing on the sand dunes, which is what we were trying to get there in time to do, but we missed that window to be able to rent the surfboards, which you can rent at the Welcome Center for like $5 a person and walk out there and surf yourself. But it was gorgeous. It was a little easy state park to stop at once we got there, because you drive down a road with no cell service and no houses and no signs of life for like 45 minutes to get there. And just a lot of random cows everywhere. So download Google Maps before you ever go to that part of the country and be prepared for just nothing for really long amounts of time. But once you got there and you drive in, it was just so awesome to see that pink sand because I've never seen anything like that.
That sounds so cool. I did sand surfing once before when I was a kid. I think that we laid down on our bellies and kind of lifted the board. I just remember sand all over my face and in my mouth, but I think my kids would have a kick out of trying to surf on sand. That sounds super cool. Also, I have heard that Google Maps now, as long as you've got it downloaded, it will keep your whole journey even if you lose cell service. But I feel like on a trip like this, I would still like want an old school guidebook or map just for fun because I feel like I don't trust phones to get me all the way there when there's no service.
We had a few nerve-wracking moments where you sit there and you're like, we're two women with our boys, right? We're driving, there's nobody around. And I don't know if you've ever been to this part of the country,
I have
but
not.
literally, it's not like here we have deer that jump out in front of you, it's cows. There's like random cows everywhere, and they just roam free, and they're like deer. And you're sitting here, like cows aren't dangerous, but you're sitting here driving down these little bitty roads, no cell service. And you just think, I really am just, dear Jesus, please just let this be the right way. Like, let us see some signs of civilization or something, because all I'm seeing is cows and trees and like hot rock formations
Yeah.
everywhere.
Oh my gosh, I know it is kind of sad how we are so dependent on our phones now, but that's also such a fun adventure. I'm proud of you guys for like two moms taking your two boys and you're just like out in the middle of the country. Like it's pretty cool that you guys did that. So then you made your way to the Holiday Inn Express in, is it Kanab?
Kanab, Utah. Yes, that is right by. So that's on the border of Utah and Arizona, which, note to self, time zones change back and forth in that area too. So if you do this road trip, our phones were on completely different times. Our kids' watches were on different times. We had no clue what time it was. When we arrived, we had to ask the hotel staff. We're like, everything is different. What time
Yeah,
zone are we
where are
in?
we? What time is it?
Because the time zones right there at the border switch back and forth a lot. But we stayed at the Holiday Inn Express because we had the kids. We were just there for one night. This trip was not a like, let's check in and relax and spend multiple days. It was we're moving nonstop. We're definitely traveling. We're not relaxing on this trip. We were sightseeing as much as we could. So we checked into the Holiday Inn Express, which I like Holiday Inn Express with kids because you get the free breakfast. You know what you're going to get with the room. Super easy to get with points. I just had one credit card offer that I signed up for and had plenty of points left over. I transferred them to my IHG account and was able to book this stay on points for free. So we paid $0. Spent the night there, got our breakfast for free, got up the next morning, packed up, and then we were able to hit the road again.
Okay, quick question about transferring points to IHG
Yes.
because I do think we might stay at a couple Holiday Inns on our trip because there do seem to be quite a few in locations that
Yes.
are easy to hit up and stop at. And again, we'll be traveling with three kids. I don't really care. I just need a place to sleep. And a lot of Holiday Inns are lovely and clean and have the free breakfast and sometimes a little indoor pools or outdoor pool. So I have an IHG account. I'm not super active with it. I've never been like a big IHG person, but I definitely have like a login. So I transfer the amount of points I need from like my Chase Sapphire card to my IHG account, and then I book through ihg.com. Is that how it works?
Yes.
Okay.
So you'll want to log into your IHG account, find the hotel, the dates, all the information that you need, see how many points that it will be for you to stay there for the night that you want to stay. Then you go back to your Chase account, and there is an option called transfer to partner.
Yep,
So
I've
then
seen
you'll
that.
find that transfer to partner option, not book travel, because that's completely different. So you'll find that transfer to partner option, and then you will only move over how many points you need. So you don't want to move more because once you move them, you can't get them back. So only move exactly what you need into your IHG account. Go back into your IHG account, refresh your screen, all your points will be there, and then you can follow through with your booking.
Awesome. And then my other quick question was, on so many hotel websites, when you book with a credit card or cash, you have the option to cancel almost up to 24 hours, 48 hours in advance, which is sometimes kind of nice when you're planning out a trip. You don't have to like fully commit. When you move points over like this, what is the cancellation options? Are you fully committed? If you cancel, do they just put the points back in IHG and you just have to use those in the future? Like, what's the cancellation if I needed to cancel, a week out or something?
Every hotel is going to be a little bit different. The cancellation policy is usually their standard cancellation policy, which is anywhere from 24 to 72 hours in advance. But yeah, if you cancel, that's the beauty of points is the points just go back in your account. So they'll stay in your IHG account for you to use for future IHG stays. Like you can't move them back to Chase or anywhere else. They stay in IHG but they're there. So your next trip, or if you need to move somewhere else, you already have that base of points there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for clearing all that up. Okay, day two. I believe you drive to Horseshoe Bend, which is on my list 100%. So tell me everything I need to know.
Horseshoe Bend, if I remember correctly, was about an hour or two from Kanab. And it was a pretty easy drive. I think we had self-service that whole time. And when we parked at Horseshoe Bend, we were trying to get there by sunrise, but it was just going to be too much for us to get there. Our goal this trip was to get in as many sunrise and sunsets with amazing landscapes as we could. So, like, that's why we timed the Pink Sands Desert for sunset. And this day, we got up and we just kind of took our time a little bit in the morning and drove to the Horseshoe Bend. And there, it was really easy. It wasn't like I expected it. It was this big parking lot. We did have to pay to get in there. I forgot how much. It wasn't super expensive. Again, nothing was crazy expensive, like 10, $15 per car or something. This huge parking lot, bathrooms, visitor center, water, like everything you need there. And it was maybe a half-mile walk. It wasn't even like a hard hike or anything to get out there. And they had viewpoints along the way where you could sit. It was a gravel path that you walked to get out to Horseshoe Bend. Once you got out there, that was my first real experience with like a major drop off, right? I'm a Midwestern girl. I was raised on a farm in Southern Illinois where all we had was cornfields, and like your biggest drop off was a ditch that went down, like a foot. And we didn't have anything like this where I grew up. So I had a little bit of anxiety about coming up to these big drop offs because as a mom, we get a little crazy and we start to like get inside our head a little bit if our kids get too close to the edge. So my anxiety was a little heightened. I'm just going to be completely honest. But we got out there and they had this whole viewing area that had a railing and they had like a very safe section that you could walk up and view with the kids. And it was crowded, so we had to kind of wait our turn to go up there and get our pictures. And it wasn't too bad. But when you looked down over that railing and saw it, it like those pictures are not photoshopped that you see of Horseshoe Bend. They probably are a little bit, but that the blue and the green of the water down there, it was it looks just like the pictures. And it
I've got to
was
look it up.
so
I'm Googling it
bright
right now.
and colorful. And you could see little people like kayaking down through the Horseshoe Bend. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, how do you get down there? What do you do when you're down there? Like, how do you get out of there? How long are you stuck down there? What's it like?
It looks incredible.
And
So, I mean, I should know this, but I haven't been there before. So the water portion looks like a horseshoe, which is so
it
cool.
does.
It's
Yes.
like
So that's why
obviously
it's
Kelsey, but
Horseshoe
that's
Bend.
so cool looking. Oh my gosh. Did you ever figure out how people are kayaking down there?
I didn't. I'm sure I could have looked it up. It just wasn't one of those things that I was like, huh, that'd be something that'd be interesting to find out. But I
Yeah,
never,
I might look
I'm sure
into it.
there's like a,
It might be locals who are just getting in, or there might be like some guided tours and stuff that you can book. It looks really cool.
that's why I said this part of the country, it's literally making a list and narrowing it down because you could spend months out there and still not do everything that you wanted to. So we had to just narrow down our biggest wish item.
Yes, definitely. I know I'm already experiencing that, having to cross things off because it's like, oh my gosh, I could do Zion or Bryce, but that's a whole nother few days and maybe that's a different trip. Like there's just so much right there. Would you
Yeah.
say for the most part, Horseshoe Bend is kind of like a stop and a picture spot and a kind of take it all in, but that's about what you do at this location?
Yeah, it's not unless you want to go and like try the hiking or go do an excursion and go down into it. It's really just a stop and picture spot. It's really easy. We were in and out of there in maybe an hour max, and that's because we just hung out to take more pictures and I was getting content for it. And there's a lot of points that you can go stand on the ledge without the railing. Like we watched, oh my gosh, this killed my anxiety. We watched this whole group of probably 10 people have their backs turned, standing on, they were probably like a foot from a ledge that was a complete drop off. They all had their arms around each other and were taking a photo, and they had someone else taking a photo. And in my mind, all I could think is, what if someone slips, that whole group is going down? Like
Yeah,
I
even
couldn't
one
even
of you.
watch.
Yeah.
I
Oh
had to
my
turn
gosh.
away. But there were people just like hanging out all over the ledges, everywhere, getting some of these amazing photos. And I'm like, we're gonna stay by the rail.
Yeah, you're like giving me, my stomach has butterflies in it right now just listening to these stories.
It was a trip that really tested my comfort zone level as a Midwesterner girl who's not that adventurous. Like city trips, beach trips, all day long. You get me out in nature like that, it is way out of my comfort zone.
Especially with boys. I feel like my middle boy, who is 9, would be the one that would be like, well, let me just go see. And I'm like, no, this is not a joke. This is reality. You could fall off the edge. That's why we haven't done like Yellowstone and stuff yet. Cause I'm like, you cannot touch the boiling water.
Yes. I know that's why like 10 was the perfect age to go and do this trip. And I did not take my 5-year-old. I intentionally, she stayed home for this trip because I'm like, we can't do that with you. But my 10-year-old, you know, at fourth grade, they're the perfect age to start to understand those boundaries. And we had a lot of conversations before he went. He has a little bit of a natural fear of heights anyway. So that helps me feel a little bit safer with it all.
Perfect. Yeah. Maybe I'll instill a fear of heights before we go. So then I believe you guys are off to the Grand Canyon. Is that right?
Yes. So after we did Horseshoe Bend, we drove to the North Rim Grand Canyon. So one thing I learned in researching the Grand Canyon is that only 10% of people that go to the South Rim actually ever see the North Rim, which is why I really wanted to see it because in everything you research, you'll read that the North Rim is more rustic, the viewpoints are more amazing, the canyon's actually deeper on the north side. So we drove from Horseshoe Bend to the North Rim, and that was another like super just gorgeous drive, no cell service, very few gas stations. So when you're driving in this part of the country, get gas where you can, take a bathroom break where you can, because they are just, you don't know when the next one's going to come.
I have a quick
On the,
question. I have
yeah,
kind
yeah.
this is kind of like a dumb question, but again, just like the state parks, do you need to make a reservation or get a ticket or anything for the Grand Canyon? Or again, can you show up with your pass and you're good to go? They're not going to like turn you away if it's a busy day.
We just showed up. Like
Okay.
I didn't make any reservations. Now, I'm sure if we were gonna, like stay in the Grand Canyon Lodge, because there's lodging
Right.
at North Rim and lodging at South Rim, you would absolutely need that. Or if you wanted an excursion, but we just showed up. Like
Okay. Awesome.
The North Rim is not super touristy. Like we did not have massive crowds.
Yeah, tell us
I
about that because everything I've read obviously is South Rim, South Rim. If you've got kids, you go to the South Rim, blah, 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 blah. So tell us what it was like approaching the North Rim and what it looked like.
So the North Rim was really interesting. As you're driving into it, you're driving because you have to, you're basically driving up a mountain, but you go through a national forest. And there is a visitor center in this place called Jacob Inn. It's Jacob Lake, and there's a little inn at Jacob Lake. And everything I read said you have to stop there and get a cookie. So we stopped there. We made that our bathroom break. By the way, if you go this way, you have to get cookies from the Jacob Lake Inn, because they were amazing cookies. We walked out of there with like 10 of them.
So
So
fun. I love that.
um but so we stopped there. It's like this cute little shop, got gas, visited the National Forest Visitor Center because they had this big map of like the Grand Canyon as a whole and the area. So you could, I mean, it's cool to see it from that aerial perspective, all laid out and be like, you were here, and here's the North Rim, and here's the East Rim, and the West Rim, and the South Rim. And like the North Rim and the East Rim are actually really, really close to each other, and they're on the same route kind of. So
So you're
which is
driving through a national forest full of trees in the desert right before you get to the North Rim?
yeah, we didn't expect that. And we did not expect that at all. And it was like
Yeah,
these gorgeous white pine trees. So it's like the gorgeous white trees that you see as you're driving through. And then there's tons of bison and buffalo and all this amazing wildlife that you would expect to see at like Yellowstone. It's all right there.
that's so
Um,
cool.
it was gorgeous. And then there's all these there's stop off points as well with like picnic centers and hiking trails. So we didn't do that on the way up. you get to the top and there's the little lodge and there's all the like shops and everything up there. So we stopped and we parked and there's all these different viewpoints. But the North Rim has less viewpoints. It's incredibly rustic. You get out and you feel like you were in the 70s. It's just the lodge feels like it's straight out of the 1970s. There's these huge, just like really rustic wooden rocking chairs sitting over lookout points around the back of it. It's all just this big stone barrier. So the railings are very different at North Rim. They're just like stone barriers, or there's a lot that don't have railings. There are some like pretty crazy hikes at North Rim. We stayed far away from those.
Yeah, you're
And
giving
then
my belly's feeling it again.
the lookout points at North Rim, there's several in the parking lot, like on the edge of the parking lot. There's several that you can just walk up to and go look, which that's where we started. And I have this video of me walking up, looking at it for the first time. And I mean, it's just something that you can't explain. You go and look at it, it's like, oh my gosh, you look at pictures of this and just the colors of the rock of the Grand Canyon and just the remoteness that you feel at North Rim is so different. It's such a different experience than South Rim. And then we walked through the lodge, walked out behind it where all the lookout points are, walked down the path and went out into a lookout point. So they have this path that you walk down that's like stone natural kind of made gravel and stairs with some pretty, they had some rails there. It's not something I would like, how do I describe
Could you
that?
slip
Let's just say it
underneath
was
them?
very, yes. So it
Yeah.
had some like chicken wire fence built underneath the rails, but
Yeah.
they didn't line up with the rocks. So I just kept looking and I'm like, oh, that's like a 3-foot gap. We could
Mm-hmm.
slip through that if we slipped and fell. So my mom, Brian, is going crazy, but I'm trying to take it all in. And my friend and her son are walking out to the very end of the lookout point, and they're just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. My son walks out there, gets like 2 feet out and sits down. He's like,
He's like,
Mom,
not today.
sits down and he tries to look from a safe point, like sitting on the ground. I walk out a little bit farther, but I left a good like 3 feet between me and the railing because it was just, once again, that moment of, oh my gosh. But the viewpoints, I mean, you could see the South Rim from there. Like it's far enough away, right? You can't see the detail, you can't see the people or anything, but you can see the other edge of it. And it's just for miles and miles and miles, all you see is just this massive canyon in the ground.
It's wild.
But the
That's what I've
north,
heard. My husband's been there and he's like, you just can't describe it. You can't
you
put it into
can't.
words. You can't even take a picture of it that does any justice. He's like, you just have to see it.
You have to. It's breathtaking. It really is. And I'm really glad we did the North Rim. And I'm glad we did it first because it made the South Rim experience that much better for me because it helps get a lot
Amazing.
of my nerves out of the way.
I mean, yeah, that's how I felt just on this most recent ski trip. It's like I'm not really afraid of heights at all, and I've skied a ton of times. But sometimes when I'm with my kids on those lifts, I'm like, you could just fall off. Like you could literally, or I think it's like the thought of like, if I wanted to, I could like jump off of this, which is the craziest feeling. But like you could literally just fall so far. It's so bizarre. And they
It
let us on
scares the
these
crap out
things.
of me. As a
Yes.
mom, it scares the crap out of me.
I know. Okay. So you did North Rim, and then in the same day, did you drive to the South Rim?
So we had to. There isn't really anywhere to stay in between. So
Okay.
like North Rim and South Rim are only 12 miles apart, but it's a 4-hour drive because you have to go all the way around the
Yeah.
edge
You
of the
can't go
Grand
in a straight
Canyon.
line through the canyon.
You can't, there's no bridge over it. Okay.
Yeah.
So once we left North Rim, we saw a sign for East Rim and we're like, oh, it's right here. Why not hit 3 rims of the Grand Canyon? So we drove probably 20 minutes down this gravel road with major drop offs. We couldn't find the East Rim. Like the signage wasn't great. We're trying to, our Google Maps isn't really working because we didn't have that part planned in it. So we ended up turning around and not continuing down the hiking trails for East Rim. But if you do want to map it out and you will be able to hit 3 of the 4 rims really easily because East Rim is right off the main road going to North Rim. So
Right off the main
just a
road, just
side
kind of
note.
hard to find.
Yeah, you just have to like probably pre-map it out and look it up a little more to find out which hiking trail to go because the signage was not like the best right there.
Okay.
But the East Rim isn't really visited, but it would be cool to just see them all.
Yeah. So tell
Um,
us about the South Rim and how it was different.
so there's one more piece though, and I don't know if I put that in my notes. When we left the North Rim and started driving back, there's this stop off point called the Vermillion Cliffs.
Okay.
They were these gorgeous pink cliffs. And when you stopped there, there's like this little bitty like cowboy town that has a gas station and a couple little like inns and houses, and straight again looks like it's straight out of the 70s. But it has this one, there's a whole bunch of lookout points for the cliffs on your way. But when you stop at this one specific place, Cliff Dwellers is what it's called. So at the Cliff Dwellers stop, it's like this little
what is
bitty,
Cliff Dwellers?
it's just as you're driving down the road, we didn't even know what it was called, but it's like this little spot where you can
Kind of
pull
like an
off.
area.
Yes, it's like
Okay.
a little, I don't even think it's labeled Cliff Dwellers. Like we
Okay.
had to ask at the gas station. We stopped because there was a gas station. But there's this spot at Vermilion Cliffs that has all these like old stone houses that are like, you can tell they're not houses anymore, but you can tell they were like back in the early days. They were legit houses where people lived, and they're like half torn down, but there's just these old stone like fort type buildings. So that's what we wanted to go explore. They're
So
right
like
there off the
cliff
main road.
dwellers, because these people were cliff dwellers. They lived in and near and on the cliffs.
Yes, and it's
Cool.
right at the base of Vermilion Cliffs. And you stop there, and there's a gas station there and some other buildings and stuff. But you can walk over and you can explore all these old little stone houses, forts, things that they used to live in. And it's she told us it's where all the old, if I remember correctly, it was like where the cowboys used to live, the cliff dwellers. And you can see when you walk in and like where their fireplaces were, how they like had their stoves and stuff set up. And it was so crazy to just walk through these little old stone houses that were like half fallen down with nothing in them, right? It's just dirt and in the inside of them, dirt and rocks. But it was
That's
just
super
really cool
cool.
to
I feel like
explore the
that's
area.
something kids would love too. Like I feel like they love seeing how people used to live and oh my gosh, they lived in this little stone house. Like I wrote that down and put it on my list because that's super cool.
And it's just a little stop along the way. Once again, we maybe spent 30, 45 minutes there. Great picture area. If you catch it at sunset, the color pink of the Vermilion Cliffs, which we caught that at sunset, that pink color on those cliffs is indescribable. It's like the reds and the pinks are so bright and just gorgeous over there.
That's cool. That's probably why they stopped and made their homes there. They got to look at that every day.
It was pretty amazing. So that night we drove to the South Rim, and we drove unknowingly through the South Rim part of the state park because it was pitch black by the time we got there. And we had no idea where we were. We're just following the instructions. Once again, no real self-service for most of that trip. And then we eventually ended up at the Holiday Inn, where we stayed at the South Rim. And that was a perfect location because it was right at the entrance of the South Rim. And there's a little town right there, and I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like Tucson or Tucson or something.
Hmm.
And it's right there at the entrance of South Rim. There's restaurants, like you could walk to the South Rim entrance if you wanted to from the Holiday Inn.
That's on my list. I literally have that to book soon because it's right there. And a lot of the other lodges I've looked into, they're fine. They're also right there, but they're not necessarily nice. And so I'm kind of like, let's just use points and stay at a Holiday Inn.
Get it for free. You're right
Yeah,
there.
right. So you are like right there, even at the Holiday Inn. Do you have to
Yes.
drive or can you walk to what you need to see from the Holiday Inn?
I would probably drive. I mean, you could walk to the entrance, right? You could probably walk. It'd be a little bit of a hike, but I would drive just because when you're in the Grand Canyon, like it's easier to drive from point to point because there's so many lookout points and the South Rim is so big.
Okay.
We got up and did sunrise at South Rim.
Okay.
So
What time
we
did you set your alarms for? Do you remember approximately? Because I would like to do this.
so we asked the front desk when we got there.
You're like, what time
Because
is
they'll
it? And what time do we set our alarms for?
and where do we go? So they gave me a map. They gave us a map and told us which places like we could look at, what were the best viewpoints for sunrise, what were the because at that point I didn't know what Southern was going to be like. So I'm like, what are the safest viewpoints for sunrise? And they looked at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, no, I just came from the North Rim and it scared the crap out of me. What are the
Yeah.
safest viewpoints here? So they gave us the times that we needed to go. They told us what time sunrise was, but you want to get there before sunrise because it did get pretty crowded. So I think we got up at like 4:30 or 4:45 or something and got there. I think sunrise was like 5:20, 5:30 because this was summer. So we got there a little before 5, and you still have to park and walk. The gates are unmanned at that time of day, so it's really more of an honor system. So you'll want to, of course, make sure you display your park pass in your window just in case. If you don't have that national park pass, you can still, there's like a self-pay option to pay and get your pass. And then you have to walk to the viewpoints. So it took us probably a good 15 minutes from the parking to walk to the viewpoint that we did. And we got out there. The main railing was already packed with people. So we had to find like a back spot that was a little bit higher up so we could look over. And because the sunrise took a while to come up over the canyon, people got bored and started to leave. So we just waited for them to leave. And that's when we swooped in and took some of those front spots. And don't leave before it's over. It will take a while for the sun to come up and cover the whole canyon. But if you can tough it out and stay there, it is so worth it just to watch the colors of the canyon change as the sun comes up because it'll be like so dark and gray and you'll see these little glimmers of like pink and greens to start off. And then the whole canyon, once it hits it just right, you see it's so colorful, so colorful.
It like comes to
Um,
life.
it comes to life and it's so neat to see it once that sun hits it just right.
That's amazing. I'm definitely going to attempt that with my family. I feel like my youngest will fight it the most. And then she'll be grumpy the rest of the day. But maybe the views will be worth it and she'll stay in a good mood.
The boys didn't want to do it, but we told them it wasn't an option. We're like, you can sleep when we get home. It's a 5-day trip, suck it up. So we went back, had breakfast, and then we went to our meet point for the pink Jeep tour. Now, if
Okay,
you
I'm
can
so curious
splurge,
about this because I was looking at pink Jeep tours in Sedona, but we might cross Sedona off our list. I'm not sure. We're trying to figure out our whole itinerary. But what do you do in a pink Jeep tour in the Grand Canyon?
okay, so in the Grand Canyon, it was so worth the excursion, the splurge on the pink Jeep tour, because it's crowded. So if you drive in, like, because we met them outside the park, so they got to drive in through the excursion lane, which they went way faster. That line to get back into the park was really backed up. So we would have sat in that entrance line for probably like 30, 45 minutes, maybe even longer, just to get in the park and park. And then they take you places that most people wouldn't even know about on the Pink Jeep tour because there's so many viewpoints. So, like when you go in the Grand Canyon, it splits, right? And there's the touristy people usually go right, which is where all of the main, like the restaurant and the lodges. We never even went to that side. We ran out of time. I wish we would have seen it, but we ran out of time. But then if you go to the other direction where they took us on our excursion, you see, and then they walk you through everything. Like, so they stop off at all these stop off points where they're not crowded, there's not people there. He took amazing photos for us. We learned so much about the history of the canyon. He was just a wealth of knowledge. There was one point where he even took us and showed the boys where fossils were in the canyon. So like you could see like snail fossils and all of the sea life fossils. And he showed him exactly where it was. He did take us to some areas over the ledge that were pretty flat, and we got to walk a little bit closer to the edge that without a railing, but they were very safe spots that he took us to. And then we went down to like the area where people camp at the Grand Canyon. I mean, it was just all these areas that you wouldn't go to if you did the Grand Canyon on your own. So I would highly suggest splurging and doing the Pink Sheep tour just to get that whole history and background And we did the first tour of the morning, so it ended up being a private tour. It was just the four of us, which made it even better because we kind of got to go a little bit more at our own pace instead of being with a whole group.
That sounds amazing. Did you feel safe being nearer the edges and all that kind of stuff?
I did. That's where the South Rim is so different
Okay.
because the South Rim is built to be way more touristy and it has a lot more flat spaces near the edges. It's not as like where you go as a tourist, unless you're doing some of the major hikes down into it, which I don't recommend in July because it is really hot. You don't feel unsafe in the South Rim.
So you did your pink Jeep tour, and then did you do anything else at the Grand Canyon, or were you guys headed to Sedona at this point?
We wanted to go back into Grand Canyon, but when we left with the Pink Jeep tour, because they take you, like your meeting point is outside of the entrance, the line to get back into Grand Canyon, he said we would have sat there for over an hour at that
Yeah.
time of day. So we're like, I'd love to go back and go look at some other stuff in the more populated areas. But at that point, we're like, you know what? We've seen the Grand Canyon. We probably got the better tour of it. So we just left. We had lunch, we packed up the car, and then we left and headed towards Sedona.
I'm pumped to know about that pink Jeep tour because I feel like I don't want to sit in a long line. You don't know exactly when you're going to arrive. And to know that you get to meet outside of the park and they bring you in a separate entrance, love all of that. So tell us about the drive from the Grand Canyon to Sedona, because in your notes, you said it's one of the most beautiful drives.
And this is what we learned on the Pink Jeep tour. He taught us so much just about the area because he asked us what all we were going to do next. And so he told us there's like two routes you can go from South Rim to Sedona. And there's like the more traveled route, which is the faster one. He said, don't go that way, take the scenic route. So we took the scenic route, and there's all these just like beautiful mountains and volcanoes. And it was just really pretty to drive that way. It was more secluded. It was once again like a two-lane road. And then as you get closer to Sedona, Sedona sits down like the mountainside, right? Because you're up at the Grand Canyon, you got to work your way down. The cliffside drive down to Sedona is probably in my opinion, one of the most gorgeous drives in America. It's just this windy road that you're going down the side of the cliff, but it's just covered in the landscape with the houses hanging off the side of the mountain, and you just have these like watering holes that people are stopping on the side of the road and going swimming in. And it's just such a pretty, gorgeous drive. Once again, something that is pictures don't even do it justice. I took a million pictures and I'm like, these don't even describe what you see as you drive down.
Yeah. Was it nerve-wracking? Like, did you feel like your car could go over the edge?
There were a couple points that it was like, that's literally a little guardrail and then a drop off right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't too bad. It was pretty crowded. It went slow because there was some construction. So we were stopped for a little bit on it. So we got to like get out of the car and walk around and go look and get some better pictures and stuff. But it wasn't too bad. It really wasn't.
Tell us about where you stayed in Sedona because this is also on my list. I'm basically going to copy your trip.
Okay, do it. So there is a Hyatt in Sedona. Hyatts are probably one of the better values for transferring points. And it's actually a vacation club. So
Which,
our
what does
room
that
was
mean?
so they're an extension of a hotel that's a little bit more apartment style. So when you get there, you have like a kitchen, you have the bedroom closes off, you have more room, there's laundry that you can do there, washing machine. So when we got to the Hyatt, because that was one of the better points values that I found when we were there, we just picked the vacation club, which was nice because we got to separate from the boys for that night and give them like we got to close the bedroom door, and they slept on the pull-out sofa and we got the bedroom, and it was just kind of nice to have like a little more space from boys.
Mm-hmm.
And it was right in the middle of Sedona. Like you could walk to this little shopping center. Sedona was a lot smaller than I thought it would be, and it was really walkable. So that Hyatt was perfect location. The pool and the resort, like main community area, sat up a little elevated. So you had 360-degree views when you were up there. So you could see all the cliffs and you could see, they said you could see the sunset from there, but it was raining that night.
How was the pool and everything?
We did not make it to the pool because it was storming that night. The boys
Okay,
were
yeah.
so bummed because they closed it because of lightning.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, we have a pool here, but we can't use it.
I know. That was our one place we were going to actually really let them swim to. That and back in Vegas.
Tell me about the blue McDonald's because this is in your notes and I don't know what it
Yes.
is.
Okay, so when you start researching Sedona, once again, we had the boys, we were there for a short amount of time. There's tons of like hiking places and good, great picture spots you can go check out. We knew we were on a limited time frame, so we tried to pick out some of the easier things to get the full Sedona experience. So there is some sort of city code in Sedona to where McDonald's can't have yellow arches. So they're blue. So
How
it's a pretty
funny.
unique like picture spot. We went to the Blue Arches McDonald's and got a picture there and got breakfast there because
Yeah, you're
food.
with your
This was
boys.
not a yeah, this trip was not centered around food. So we had a McDonald's breakfast at the Blue Arches and drove around, did some sightseeing stuff there. There's a place in Sedona where like a church is built into the mountain, Chapel of the Holy Cross. And we went and visited that because it's really cool to see the way it's Chapel of the Holy Cross. And that was one of our main tourist destinations. We did a small hike around there because there's just so many places to go hike and see. It's free to go to. And you walk in and it's this little bitty church, but it's built into the side of the cliff. So the architecture of it is just amazing. It's like this cliff, and then there's just a window with a huge cross hanging off the side of it. And it's a walk to get up there, but the path is fully paved, but it is a little bit of a hike. And you walk in, and it's just really cool the way they incorporated the landscape into this just gorgeous church. And they had a little gift shop in the bottom of it. So that was just an easy stop that we did
Very cool.
in Sedona. And then we also did the main shopping center called Talakipaki Arts and Shopping Village.
That's a mouthful.
It is, but it's just a cool place to see. We didn't really do any shopping there, but it has all these gorgeous fountains, and like all the greenery and the plants are basically they just blend into the buildings, and the way this place is designed is really worth the stop to see it.
Cool.
And that was our 24 hours in Sedona.
That was
It
your
was a fast visit.
Sedona whirlwind. So then you are attempting to start making your way back to Vegas and you head toward Williams.
Yes. Okay. So this is what we learned on our Pink Jeep tour.
Okay.
I had no clue. I knew part of the historic Route 66 was there. I did not know that the inspiration from the movie Cars came from this section of Route 66. And we would have completely passed it had he not told us about it. Because there's Williams, which is like a really big tourist destination outside of Grand Canyon where people stay because it's not that far. Because like when you leave Grand Canyon, you're going south to Sedona, then you're backtracking a little bit to get up to Vegas again. And so Williams is where people stay. There's a lot of tourist stuff to do there. It is a cute little town. It's on historic Route 66, so they have a lot of like Route 66 stuff. One unique place we stopped at is called the Poozeum, and it is the largest collection of fossilized poo. And it was just like something that 10-year-old boys loved, right? Like we just got to go in and look at fossilized dinosaur poop.
That's
And it
hilarious.
was,
I've never heard of that.
I had neither. We just saw it as we were driving by and we're like, Poozeum, what's that? So we just stopped and went in the Poozeum.
Hilarious.
And then we kept driving down Route 66. And this is the point that we would have bypassed had he not told us about it. But then there's this little town that you drive to. If you stay on Route 66, you'll get there. It's called Seligman. And that is the town that the movie Cars is based on. There's points of like Williams that you can kind of get some inspiration of Cars, right? And they claim that they have cars. And there's some of it. You see it, like the way the town's designed with the loop. But when you get to Seligman, it is all cars. It's another little stopping point. We probably spent about an hour and a half to 2 hours there, longer than we wanted to. But it was just so cute. It was maybe like 6 buildings. It was really tiny. but the people were so nice and they told us all about how like Disney came in and how it worked with them filming Cars and where the inspiration came from. And they have like the real life version of all the cars sitting there, but not all of them, because they did tell us that Disney took inspiration for the movie from like all along Route 66, so Chicago all the way to LA. So there's some of the cars are in other places, but that was the biggest portion of it. So we got to see like Mater, and it was just really cool to experience the real cars. And we would have completely missed that had he not told us about it.
That's so fun. I love that. Seligman. And then you get to
Hmm.
watch Cars again and be like, I've basically been there.
Yes, and then as you leave Seligman and you keep driving back towards Hoover Dam, we stayed on Route 66 because there's a part in the movie where she says, like, hey, stickers, you want to take a drive? And that's when they, Lightning McQueen, and I'm blanking on the lady's name right now. That's when they start like driving down those roads and they have all these cliffs. And there's a portion of that drive that as you drive down there, you're like, oh my gosh, this is the movie. We're kind of driving through the movie right now.
So fun.
There's not a waterfall, right? We didn't find the waterfall portion, but there's so many pieces of it that you literally feel like you're driving down the movie Cars. And it was just really cool to experience it.
Yeah. And it helps you pass the time too. If you're going to be on a long drive, at least there's some cool stuff to look at while you're driving
Yeah.
along. So then you headed to the Hoover Dam. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I went there a
We
very long time ago. So I don't remember, but did you take the tour? I just remember the person we were with kept calling it, we're going to go on the dam tour because it was funny that he could like kind of cuss, but like we were going on a dam tour. And I was like, okay, we get the joke.
we did not time our trip appropriately to make it there during technical visiting hours because we took by adding in all of Route 66, we took a little bit longer, which was well worth it, right? So we got to the Hoover Dam. You can still drive in there and go park and go to the viewing points. We just didn't get to go inside of it because that was already closed by the time we got there. But it was windy. I did not expect it to be so windy. Like our hats were about to fly off. And I mean, you couldn't even open your eyes. It was
Because
so
of the
windy.
rushing water or because of that's just how it always is?
I think it's just really windy in that part of like the landscape. I don't
Okay.
know, but it was like gonna blow you over windy.
Okay.
You're trying to take pictures and you're sitting there, you're like, I don't want my hand, but I'm gonna lose my hat.
Yeah.
And you have to have a hat because it's 110 degrees, so like you want to cover your face and your head.
Yeah.
Um, and we saw it. We stopped there for maybe 30 minutes and we're like, all right, Hoover Dam was a little underwhelming
Yeah.
considering what
Check
I
the
thought it was
box.
going to be. Check the box.
And then you continue on to Vegas for a fun hotel
Vegas.
stay.
Yes, so we had promised the boys that would be their night to swim, and we were gonna like order pizza and do room service by the pool and do Vegas like right with little boys. We get there, it's probably 7:30 at night by the time we get there. The pool was closed.
You're staying at New
Apparently,
York, New York.
we stayed at the New York, New York, and we're like, it has the roller coaster, it has like right in the middle of the strip. It has we thought it'd be fun for the kids. The pool was closed.
I mean, does
Apparently, they
Vegas ever close? You're like, isn't the pool going to be open till midnight?
That's what we thought, but the pools close early. So note to self, if you take kids to Vegas, make sure you plan pool time because
Oh, that's a
they
bummer.
all every hotel was like that.
Oh, weird. You wouldn't think
Hmm.
that.
No, so we had to pivot and we took a nice walk down the strip, which was a lot of fun with two 10-year-old boys. Thankfully, outside of some really sketchy smells and only a couple thongs, we didn't see anything too crazy. So
I know my husband was recently there for a work conference and he was like, this place is just, I mean, obviously we've been there before, but he was just like, this is wild.
I'm fine if I don't ever go back to Vegas. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's what
it
he said.
it felt like you were in a sauna surrounded by millions of stinky people. It was a hot breeze.
Yeah.
Like it was still windy in
You're
Vegas,
like, do I smell throw up in that breeze?
but it was like 9, 10 o'clock at night and it was
Yeah.
still 105 degrees and it was just miserable.
Yeah.
Miserable. So we're like, we're just gonna go back to the room. And we got a room on a low floor, which they loved because we could look out and see the roller coaster. They decided not to ride it because it was a little intense, but they watched it they watched it for like a really long time because we were
Fun.
right there at the loop. So we got to watch everybody come by, but we heard screaming like well into the middle of the night.
Yeah, you're
So
like, the pool's not open, but the roller coaster is sure going pretty late.
you know, thank God it was just one night in Vegas that we survived, and then we flew back home the next day. So
You guys packed a lot in on this trip. If you could go back to this trip and just do one or two of your stops, what did you love so much that you'd want to see again?
well, obviously you have to leave the Grand Canyon in there. If I
Yes.
had to choose one, I would choose South Rim just because there's so much more to do and there's so many more viewpoints. The Pink Sands Desert was so gorgeous at sunset. It's unlike anything. I mean, everything on this trip was unlike anything I've ever seen. I feel like I've said that. But the Pink Sands Desert, just seeing that pink sand, the Vermillion Cliffs at sunset, where it was just like the pink rock, was just so, so pretty. I don't know if I can answer that question because Horseshoe, everything was so colorful.
I love it. You don't have to answer it. I'm not going to force you to, but you did name three places. So I just want to know in my brain where I have to focus on, where I have to get to. Okay, Joy, I end every episode with, if someone out there is considering this trip, what is it about the Grand Canyon and all the other adventures you hit along the way that would make you say, just book it?
Oh, the Grand Canyon to us is kind of like a once in a lifetime experience, right? To see it at sunrise, to experience these views that you can look in pictures all day long, but pictures will never really do it justice. If you're afraid of heights, if you are not a hiker, if you're not an adventurer person, you're probably thinking like I was, whatever, I don't really have a desire for the Grand Canyon. I'll look at it in pictures. It kind of scares the crap out of me. Get out of your comfort zone and go do it. It was something that pushed me way out of my comfort zone because as a mom, those drop offs, I'm not going to lie, they were really scary. But just to see the depths of it and the colors and just to learn more about how it was made and to experience that with my son when he's also learning about it in school, like in fifth grade, they did a whole section on the Grand Canyon. And I'm like, oh, we can send pictures. You can say you went there. And it's something to really push yourself outside your comfort zone and go do it because you'll regret it if you don't ever get to see a sunrise at the Grand Canyon.
Amazing. I am pumped for our summer trip now. So thank you for all of that information. Tell everyone where they can find you online.
Yeah, so we are at Savvy Travel Mamas on Instagram, and that is Mamas Mamas. So you can find us there. We have a link in our bio. You can click on there to find out more information about how to take our course. If you need credit card recommendations, if you want to work with us, we have all of that on our link in bio for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Joy.
Yes, thank you, Kelsey. It was a lot of fun.
That wraps up another episode of Trip Tales. If you have a trip you'd like to share about on the podcast, email me at triptalespodcast@gmail.com and I'll add you to the schedule. Also, be sure to follow the show so that you don't miss any upcoming vacation destinations. And if you have an extra minute in your day, please leave a review for the podcast. It helps more than you could imagine. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode of Trip Tales.